You are listening to an extended audio preview of Chaos Ritual Handbook, written by Adam Lusum and published by LLH Media. The complete book is available from LLH Media and selected online retailers. Chapter 1, Introduction to Chaos Ritual. Chaos Ritual Handbook. Chapter 1, Introduction to Chaos Ritual. Magic, in its many forms, has accompanied human civilization from the flickering firelight of ancient caves to the neon-lit streets of the digital age. It is woven into the stories we tell, the symbols we draw, and the rituals we perform to give meaning to our lives. While the methods and beliefs have shifted across cultures and centuries, the essential drive remains: to influence the world and ourselves through focused intention and symbolic action. Amid the diverse tapestry of magical traditions, Chaos Ritual stands apart as a modern, adaptive, and often controversial approach. This chapter offers an overview of Chaos Ritual, tracing its origins, exploring its core principles, and situating it within the broader context of magical practice. To understand Chaos Ritual, it is first necessary to recognize the shifting landscape of Western esotericism. For much of recorded history, magic was bound to religious institutions, cultural customs, or secret societies. The grimoires of medieval Europe, the ceremonial rites of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and the intricate systems of Thelema all exemplify traditions with defined hierarchies, dogmas, and prescribed rituals. These systems often demanded years of study and adherence to established cosmologies, whether invoking angels, spirits, or archetypal forces. The practitioner's role was to fit themselves within an existing framework, drawing power from its symbols and authorities. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, these traditions experienced both revitalization and challenge. The rise of scientific rationalism, psychology, and global interconnectedness led many to question the necessity of rigid dogma in magical practice. Out of this ferment emerged a new attitude, one that valued personal experience over inherited authority and experimentation over tradition. It is within this context that Chaos Magick, and by extension Chaos Ritual, was born. Chaos Ritual, as its name suggests, is rooted in the concept of chaos. In modern parlance, chaos does not simply mean disorder or randomness, but rather the fertile ground from which new forms emerge. Chaos is the creative void, the primordial soup of potential. For the Chaos Magician, the universe is not governed by fixed laws or immutable truths, but by patterns that can be manipulated, reinterpreted, or discarded as needed. This perspective is both liberating and daunting. It places the burden of meaning-making squarely on the individual, who must navigate the shifting sands of belief, symbol, and desire. The origins of Chaos Ritual can be traced most directly to the late 1970s and early 1980s in England, where a small group of magicians began to articulate a new philosophy of magic. Chief among them were Peter J. Carroll and Ray Sherwin, whose writings, particularly Carroll's Liber Null and Psychonaut, became foundational texts for the movement. Drawing on the work of earlier visionaries like Austin Osman Spare, as well as influences from science fiction, psychology, and Eastern philosophy, these practitioners sought to strip magic down to its raw essentials. They rejected the need for elaborate dogma or inherited symbolism, arguing instead that belief itself is a tool, not a truth. At the heart of Chaos Ritual lies a radical pragmatism. If a ritual works, it is valid, regardless of its origin, tradition, or internal logic. The effectiveness of a magical act is not tied to the objective reality of its symbols, but to their subjective impact on the practitioner's psyche. This approach echoes the insights of modern psychology, particularly the work of Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, who recognized the power of symbols, archetypes, and the unconscious mind in shaping human experience. For the Chaos Magician, the mind is both laboratory and temple, and the ritual is a means of hacking one's own perception to achieve desired results. Unlike traditional systems that prescribe specific rituals, tools, and deities, Chaos Ritual is intentionally eclectic. A Chaos Magician might borrow a gesture from Tibetan Buddhism, a symbol from Norse mythology, and a mantra from pop culture, weaving them together into a unique personal rite. The only criterion is efficacy. This willingness to mix and match, to treat all symbols as equally valid or equally arbitrary, has led some critics to dismiss chaos magic as superficial or unserious. Yet its practitioners argue that this very flexibility is its strength. By refusing to be bound by tradition, chaos ritual remains adaptable, creative, and responsive to the needs of the moment. To grasp the significance of chaos ritual, it is helpful to situate it within the broader evolution of magical practice. The oldest magical traditions were deeply embedded in their cultural and religious contexts. In ancient Egypt, priests performed complex rites to maintain the order of the cosmos, invoking gods and manipulating sacred objects. In medieval Europe, grimoires provided instructions for summoning angels or demons, often couched in the language of Christian theology. In the East, systems like Taoist alchemy or Vajrayana Buddhism developed intricate symbolic maps of the spiritual world. The common thread across these traditions is the use of ritual, a structured sequence of actions, gestures, and words intended to produce a specific effect. Rituals serve multiple functions. They focus the mind, encode symbolic meaning, and connect the practitioner to a larger cosmological framework. In traditional systems, the power of the ritual often derives from its lineage, the authority of its symbols, or the intervention of supernatural beings. Chaos ritual, by contrast, dispenses with the need for external authority. It recognizes that the efficacy of a ritual depends less on its objective content than on the subjective state it induces. The chaos magician is a bricoleur, assembling rituals from whatever materials are at hand. This process is not random, but guided by intention and experimentation. If a borrowed symbol resonates, it is used. If it ceases to be effective, it is discarded. In this sense, chaos ritual is a living, evolving practice, a form of magical improvisation. The roots of chaos ritual can be traced even further back, however. While its modern articulation is recent, the spirit of chaos magic echoes earlier movements of magical innovation and heresy. The Gnostics of late antiquity, for example, rejected the orthodox cosmology of their time and sought direct personal experience of the divine. The alchemists of the Renaissance blended Christian, pagan, and Hermetic symbols in their quest for transformation. In each case, there is a willingness to question received wisdom, to experiment with new forms, and to prioritize personal gnosis over institutional dogma. Austin Osman Spare, often cited as the spiritual grandfather of chaos magic, embodied this iconoclastic spirit. Active in the early 20th century, Spare developed a system of sigilization, a method of encoding desire into symbolic form and implanting it in the unconscious. Spare's writings, often dense and idiosyncratic, emphasize the power of belief, the manipulation of consciousness, and the liberation of the individual from social and psychological constraints. His influence on chaos ritual is profound, particularly in the emphasis on direct experience, self-invention, and the use of altered states of consciousness. The rise of chaos ritual in the late 20th century coincided with broader cultural currents, the decline of traditional religious authority, the rise of postmodern philosophy, and the explosion of information technology. In a world saturated with competing narratives, symbols, and belief systems, chaos ritual offers a toolkit for navigating the chaos. It does not demand allegiance to any particular worldview, but invites the practitioner to become a conscious agent in the creation of meaning. This approach has profound implications for the practice of magic. In traditional systems, the goal of ritual is often union with the divine, communication with spirits, or alignment with cosmic forces. In chaos ritual, the goal is more often personal transformation, the achievement of specific results, or the exploration of altered states of consciousness. The focus shifts from external validation to internal efficacy. The chaos magician is less concerned with pleasing gods or following tradition, and more interested in hacking their own mind to achieve desired outcomes. One of the defining features of chaos ritual is its emphasis on the psychology of belief. In chaos magic, belief is not a static state, but a tool that can be adopted, discarded, or modified at will. This is sometimes described as belief as a magical act. The practitioner learns to enter into a chosen belief system for the duration of a ritual, fully inhabiting its symbols and logic, and then stepping out of it when the ritual is complete. This flexibility allows the chaos magician to experiment with a wide range of techniques, drawing from diverse traditions without being bound by any single one. The process of constructing a chaos ritual typically begins with a clear statement of intent. What does the practitioner wish to achieve? This could be anything from personal insight to material gain, from healing to artistic inspiration. The intent is then encoded in symbolic form, perhaps as a sigil, a phrase, or an image. The ritual itself may involve meditation, chanting, movement, visualization, or any other technique that focuses the mind and energy on the desired outcome. The details are less important than the underlying process, the creation of a liminal space in which ordinary reality is temporarily suspended and new possibilities can emerge. A key aspect of chaos ritual is the induction of altered states of consciousness. These states, sometimes called Gnosis, are believed to facilitate the implantation of intent in the unconscious mind. Techniques for achieving Gnosis vary widely, from meditation and breathwork to dancing, drumming, or even sensory overload. The goal is to bypass the critical faculties of the conscious mind and access deeper layers of the psyche. In this sense, chaos ritual shares common ground with shamanic traditions, which also use trance states and symbolic action to effect change. The use of eclectic symbolism is another hallmark of chaos ritual. Traditional magical systems often insist on the sanctity of their symbols, treating them as sacred or uniquely powerful. Chaos ritual, by contrast, treats all symbols as malleable. A chaos magician might use the pentagram one day, the Taoist yin-yang the next, and a superhero logo the day after. The power of the symbol lies not in its objective meaning, but in its resonance with the practitioner's intent and belief. This approach reflects a postmodern sensibility, in which meaning is fluid, context-dependent, and subject to reinterpretation. Critics of chaos ritual sometimes argue that this flexibility leads to superficiality or nihilism. If all symbols are equally valid, does anything really matter? Chaos magicians respond that the point is not to deny meaning, but to recognize its constructed nature. Meaning is not handed down from on high, but created through participation, intention, and experience. In this view, ritual is a form of art, a creative act that shapes both the practitioner and the world. The practical implications of chaos ritual are significant. Because it is not bound to any particular tradition, it is accessible to anyone willing to experiment. There are no secret initiations, no required oaths, no gatekeepers. The tools of chaos ritual are whatever works: candles, music, movement, visualization, technology. The only requirement is a willingness to engage, to explore, and to question. This democratization of magic has contributed to the spread of chaos ritual, particularly among younger practitioners and those disenchanted with traditional religious or magical systems. At the same time, chaos ritual demands a high degree of self-awareness and responsibility. Without the guardrails of tradition, the practitioner must navigate their own ethical and psychological boundaries. The freedom to construct one's own rituals comes with the risk of self-delusion, obsession, or unintended consequences. Many chaos magicians emphasize the importance of journaling, reflection, and critical thinking as safeguards against these pitfalls. The chaos ritualist is both magician and scientist, testing hypotheses, recording results, and refining techniques. The influence of chaos ritual extends beyond the world of occultism. Its principles have found echoes in fields as diverse as psychology, art, activism, and technology. The idea that belief is a tool, that meaning is constructed, and that reality can be hacked has become a guiding metaphor for many in the digital age. Artists use chaos ritual techniques to unlock creativity. Activists employ symbolic action to shift consciousness. Technologists explore the boundaries of virtual and augmented reality. In each case, the core insight is the same. Reality is not fixed, but malleable, and ritual is a means of shaping it. It is important to recognize that chaos ritual is not a rejection of tradition per se, but a reimagining of its possibilities. Many chaos magicians draw deeply from traditional sources, but do so with conscious intent and critical awareness. They are not content to simply repeat inherited forms, but seek to understand and transform them. In this sense, chaos ritual is both postmodern and perennial, a new expression of an ancient impulse. The practice of chaos ritual often begins with small experiments. A novice might create a simple sigil to represent a desire, charge it through meditation or dance, and observe the results. Over time, the practitioner develops a personal toolkit of techniques, symbols, and methods that resonate with their own psyche. Some may gravitate towards elaborate ceremonies, others towards minimalist gestures. The key is experimentation, reflection, and adaptation. There are no final answers, only provisional truths. The role of community in Chaos Ritual is complex. On one hand, Chaos Magick is highly individualistic, emphasizing personal experience over group consensus. On the other, practitioners often share techniques, stories, and results, forming loose networks of mutual support. The internet has played a significant role in this process, enabling the rapid exchange of ideas and the creation of virtual communities. These networks are typically non-hierarchical, with an emphasis on sharing rather than authority. Despite its emphasis on individual freedom, Chaos Ritual is not without its own forms of discipline. The cultivation of focus, intention, and self-awareness is essential. The Chaos Magician must learn to enter and exit belief systems at will, to navigate altered states of consciousness, and to observe the effects of their rituals with honesty and rigor. This requires practice, patience, and a willingness to confront one's own limitations and blind spots. The ethical dimension of Chaos Ritual is an ongoing conversation. Without the moral frameworks provided by traditional systems, practitioners must develop their own codes of conduct. Some adopt the principle of do what thou wilt, but harm none, while others emphasize personal responsibility and a law of unintended consequences. The freedom to shape one's own reality comes with the obligation to consider its impact on others and on oneself. In summary, Chaos Ritual represents a distinctive approach to magic, characterized by flexibility, pragmatism, and a focus on personal experience. It arises from a historical context of questioning, experimentation, and the breakdown of traditional authority. Its core principles, the use of belief as a tool, the construction of rituals from eclectic sources, and the emphasis on altered states of consciousness, reflect both ancient practices and modern insights. Chaos Ritual invites the practitioner to become an active participant in the creation of meaning, to experiment with symbols and techniques, and to take responsibility for their own magical journey. As we proceed through the chapters of this handbook, we will explore the practical methods, philosophical underpinnings, and ethical considerations of Chaos Ritual in greater depth. Whether you are a seasoned practitioner or a curious newcomer, the path of Chaos Ritual offers both challenge and opportunity. It is a journey into the heart of creativity, uncertainty, and transformation, a journey that begins, as all rituals do, with the simple act of intention. Chapter 2. The Philosophy of Chaos Magick. Chaos Magick is often described as the punk rock of modern occultism. It is a practice that deliberately breaks with tradition, eschews dogma, and embraces experimentation, adaptability, and personal empowerment. To understand Chaos Magick is not merely to learn a set of rituals or symbols, but to fundamentally reconsider how belief, reality, and transformation interact. The philosophy of Chaos Magick is both radical and pragmatic, rooted in skepticism and creativity, and it offers a unique perspective on consciousness, will, and the nature of the universe. At its core, Chaos Magick is the art and science of using belief as a tool. Traditional magical systems often require strict adherence to established symbols, deities, and rituals. In contrast, Chaos Magicians view all of these as optional, interchangeable, and ultimately arbitrary. Nothing is sacred except the effectiveness of the practice. This approach is sometimes misunderstood as nihilistic or trivial, but in truth, it is deeply philosophical. It asks practitioners to confront the malleability of reality and the power of the mind to shape experience. The roots of Chaos Magick can be traced to the late 20th century, particularly in the work of Peter J. Carroll and Ray Sherwin, who articulated its principles in books such as Liber Null and Psychonaut and the Book of Results. These early Chaos Magicians drew inspiration from a wide range of sources, including Aleister Crowley's Thelemic Magic, Austin Osman Spare's concept of sigils and the neither-neither principle, as well as the insights of science, psychology, and postmodern philosophy. The result is a practice that is eclectic, dynamic, and constantly evolving. One of the foundational beliefs of Chaos Magick is the primacy of belief itself. Where most systems of thought treat belief as a reflection of reality, Chaos Magicians treat belief as a creative force. Belief is not something to be passively held, but something to be actively chosen, manipulated, and discarded as needed. This concept is often encapsulated in the dictum, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted." This phrase, originally attributed to Hassani Sabah, the legendary leader of the medieval order of assassins, is used in Chaos Magick to express the idea that all beliefs are provisional, and that the practitioner is free to adopt, adapt, or abandon them according to the needs of the moment. This radical approach to belief has several important implications. First, it means that chaos magicians do not see themselves as bound by any particular tradition, dogma, or cosmology. They are free to borrow, remix, and invent rituals and symbols from any source: ancient mythologies, pop culture, science fiction, or even their own imagination. What matters is not the objective truth of the symbol, but its subjective effectiveness for the practitioner. If invoking Batman as a spirit of justice and resilience is more meaningful and empowering than invoking an ancient god, then Batman becomes a valid magical entity within the Chaos Magician's practice. Second, the philosophy of Chaos Magick acknowledges the plasticity of the mind and the fluidity of identity. The self is not seen as a fixed essential entity, but as a construct that can be reshaped through ritual, meditation, and creative play. This aligns with the insights of modern psychology, particularly the idea that the subconscious mind is highly susceptible to suggestion, and that the boundaries between the conscious and unconscious are porous. By deliberately adopting different beliefs, personas, and magical systems, Chaos Magicians train themselves to be flexible, adaptive, and self-aware. This process is sometimes referred to as paradigm shifting. A paradigm in this context is a set of beliefs, symbols, and practices that shape how a person experiences reality. Most people inhabit a single paradigm, religious, scientific, or otherwise, without questioning it. Chaos Magicians, by contrast, practice shifting between paradigms at will, learning to inhabit different worldviews and use them as tools for transformation. This practice can be disorienting, but it offers profound insights into the nature of belief, perception, and reality itself. The act of shifting paradigms is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is an embodied, experiential process. Chaos Magicians use ritual, meditation, visualization, and other techniques to immerse themselves in different belief systems, testing their effects on consciousness and behavior. This process requires both skepticism and open-mindedness. Skepticism to avoid becoming trapped by any one belief, and open-mindedness to fully explore the possibilities of each paradigm. The result is a kind of magical agnosticism, a willingness to entertain any belief, but a refusal to be defined by any. Underlying this approach is a particular view of reality, sometimes called ontological pluralism. Ontology is the branch of philosophy concerned with the nature of being and existence. Ontological pluralism is the idea that there is no single objective reality, but rather a multiplicity of realities, each shaped by belief, perception, and language. For Chaos Magicians, the universe is not a fixed, static thing, but a dynamic interplay of consciousness, energy, and meaning. Magical practice, then, is a way of navigating and reshaping these realities, using belief as both compass and sculptor. This view is supported by insights from contemporary science and philosophy. Quantum physics, for example, suggests that the act of observation can influence the outcome of experiments, blurring the line between subject and object. Postmodern philosophy questions the existence of absolute truth and emphasizes the role of language, narrative, and interpretation in shaping reality. Chaos Magicians draw on these ideas to justify their pragmatic, experimental approach. They see the boundaries between magic, psychology, and art as fluid, and are willing to use any technique that produces results. Another key philosophical principle in Chaos Magick is the emphasis on personal experience and experimentation. Chaos Magicians are encouraged to test everything for themselves, rather than relying on the authority of tradition, teachers, or books. This is sometimes called the scientific illuminism of Chaos Magick, a commitment to empirical investigation, but applied to the inner world of consciousness and will. Techniques are evaluated not by their historical pedigree or theoretical elegance, but by their practical effectiveness in producing desired changes in perception, behavior, or circumstance. This experimental ethos extends to every aspect of magical practice. Chaos Magicians invent their own rituals, create personal symbols, and develop idiosyncratic systems of divination, invocation, and enchantment. They are encouraged to keep detailed records of their experiments, noting what works, what doesn't, and how different techniques interact. Over time, each practitioner develops a unique magical toolkit, tailored to their own psyche, goals, and aesthetic sensibilities. This emphasis on personal experimentation leads to a distinctive attitude toward tradition. Chaos Magicians are not hostile to tradition per se, rather they see it as a resource to be mined, rather than a rulebook to be obeyed. Ancient rituals and symbols are valued for their psychological power, aesthetic beauty, or mythic resonance, but they are not treated as inviolable laws. If a traditional ritual does not resonate with the practitioner, it can be modified, discarded, or replaced. The only criterion is effectiveness. This pragmatic, results-oriented approach is sometimes summed up in the phrase, "If it works, use it." In the Chaos Magic community, debates about the correct way to perform a ritual or the true meaning of a symbol are often met with bemusement or indifference. What matters is not orthodoxy, but efficacy. This can be liberating, but it also places a great deal of responsibility on the individual practitioner. Without the safety net of tradition or external authority, the Chaos Magician must rely on their own judgment, intuition, and discernment. This radical individualism is both a strength and a challenge. On the one hand, it empowers practitioners to take control of their own spiritual and psychological development, free from dogma and hierarchy. On the other hand, it can lead to isolation, confusion, or self-delusion if not balanced by critical self-awareness and community support. Many Chaos Magicians find it helpful to participate in groups, forums, or workshops where they can share experiences, learn from others, and maintain a sense of perspective. The philosophy of Chaos Magick also emphasizes the importance of play, creativity, and humor. Magical practice is not seen as a solemn, rigid affair, but as a form of creative expression and exploration. Rituals can be playful, surreal, or even absurd. Symbols can be borrowed from cartoons, movies, or personal dreams. This playful attitude serves several purposes. It helps to bypass the critical, skeptical mind, allowing deeper levels of the psyche to be engaged. It also serves as a safeguard against dogmatism and fanaticism, reminding the practitioner that all beliefs are ultimately provisional, and that the universe is far weirder and more mysterious than any system can contain. This sense of play is linked to the concept of magical consciousness, or Gnosis. In Chaos Magick, Gnosis refers to an altered state of consciousness in which the mind is focused, receptive, and open to transformation. This state can be induced through meditation, ecstatic dance, intense emotion, or even laughter. The goal is to temporarily suspend the ordinary discursive mind, the part that analyzes, doubts, and resists change, and allow a deeper, more fluid state of consciousness to emerge. In this state, the magician can implant new beliefs, perform rituals, or access hidden aspects of the self. The cultivation of Gnosis is central to Chaos Magick. It is the engine that drives transformation, the gateway to altered realities, and the source of magical power. There are many techniques for inducing Gnosis, ranging from traditional methods such as meditation and chanting to more unorthodox approaches like sex, pain, or sensory deprivation. The common thread is the deliberate disruption of ordinary consciousness and the opening of a space for new possibilities to emerge. This focus on altered states of consciousness aligns Chaos Magick with both ancient shamanic traditions and modern psychological theories. Shamans, mystics, and magicians throughout history have used trance, ecstasy, and visionary experience to access hidden realms of power and knowledge. Modern psychology, particularly the work of figures like Carl Jung, explores the role of the unconscious mind, archetypes, and altered states in creativity and healing. Chaos magicians draw on both traditions, using whatever techniques resonate with their own temperament and goals. Another philosophical theme in Chaos Magick is the relationship between order and chaos. The name Chaos Magick itself is provocative, suggesting a rejection of order, structure, or coherence. In practice, however, Chaos magicians do not worship chaos for its own sake. Rather, they recognize that both order and chaos are necessary and complementary aspects of existence. Order provides stability, continuity, and meaning. Chaos provides creativity, novelty, and transformation. The magician's task is to navigate between these poles, using chaos to disrupt stagnant patterns and order to integrate new insights. This dialectic between order and chaos is reflected in the practice of ritual itself. Rituals provide structure, focus, and symbolic meaning, creating a temporary order within the chaos of experience. At the same time, the content of rituals can be chaotic, unpredictable, or surreal, challenging the practitioner's assumptions and opening the way for transformation. The interplay of order and chaos is not a problem to be solved, but a dynamic to be explored and harnessed. The philosophy of Chaos Magick is also deeply concerned with the nature of will. In traditional Western occultism, will is often defined as the focused intention that shapes reality. Aleister Crowley famously declared, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," emphasizing the importance of discovering and following one's true will. Chaos magicians inherit this emphasis on will, but reinterpret it in their own terms. For them, will is not a fixed, transcendent essence, but a process of ongoing creation and discovery. The true will is not something to be found once and for all, but something to be continually explored, refined, and enacted. This process of self-creation is at the heart of Chaos Magick. The practitioner is both artist and artwork, both scientist and experiment. Through ritual, meditation, and creative play, the Chaos Magician sculpts their own identity, beliefs, and experience. This is not a narcissistic or solipsistic endeavor, but an existential act of freedom and responsibility. The Chaos Magician recognizes that meaning is not given, but made, that reality is not fixed, but fluid, and that transformation is always possible. This emphasis on self-creation and transformation resonates with existentialist philosophy, particularly the work of thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Friedrich Nietzsche. Existentialism teaches that human beings are condemned to be free, that we must create our own values and meaning in a world without inherent purpose. Chaos magicians embrace this challenge, using magical practice as a means of existential self-expression and empowerment. They do not seek to escape reality, but to engage with it more deeply, more creatively, and more consciously. The philosophy of Chaos Magick also invites reflection on the ethical dimensions of magical practice. As all beliefs are provisional, and all symbols are tools, what guides the magician's actions? Without external authority or dogma, how does one distinguish between constructive and destructive uses of magical power? Chaos magicians approach these questions in a variety of ways. Some adopt a pragmatic ethic, evaluating actions by their consequences for themselves and others. Others draw on personal values, mythic archetypes, or communal norms. There is no single answer, but a recognition that freedom and responsibility go hand in hand. Some critics accuse chaos magicians of moral relativism or irresponsibility, arguing that the rejection of tradition and authority leads to chaos in the negative sense, anarchy, selfishness, or nihilism. In response, many chaos magicians emphasize the importance of self-awareness, empathy, and discernment. The power to shape reality is not to be taken lightly, and the cultivation of wisdom, humility, and compassion is seen as essential. Magical practice is not an escape from ethics, but a call to greater responsibility for one's own beliefs, actions, and their effects on the world. The philosophy of Chaos Magick also has implications for the practitioner's relationship to society and culture. Chaos magicians often see themselves as outsiders, rebels, or tricksters, challenging the norms and assumptions of mainstream society. They may use magical practice as a form of cultural critique, subversion, or activism, drawing on the archetype of the holy fool, the clown, or the culture jammer. At the same time, chaos magicians are not necessarily antisocial or misanthropic. Many see their work as a contribution to the evolution of consciousness, the liberation of the imagination, and the creation of new possibilities for human flourishing. This attitude is reflected in the use of pop culture, technology, and contemporary art in Chaos Magick. Unlike traditional occultists, who may insist on the use of ancient symbols and languages, chaos magicians are happy to invoke superheroes, movie icons, or internet memes if these resonate more deeply with their own psyche and the cultural moment. The boundaries between the sacred and the profane, the ancient and the modern, are deliberately blurred. Magic becomes a living, evolving practice, responsive to the needs and challenges of the present. This openness to innovation is one of the great strengths of Chaos Magick, but it also poses challenges. The lack of fixed doctrine or authoritative texts can make it difficult for newcomers to find their way. The emphasis on personal experimentation can lead to confusion, inconsistency, or even psychological risk, if not approached with care. For this reason, experienced chaos magicians emphasize the importance of grounding, self-care, and critical reflection. Techniques such as journaling, meditation, and regular reality checks can help practitioners maintain balance and perspective. In summary, the philosophy of Chaos Magick is a radical departure from traditional occultism. It is rooted in the creative use of belief, the plasticity of the mind, and the dynamic interplay of order and chaos. It encourages practitioners to experiment, play, and invent, to shift between paradigms and explore the limits of consciousness. It is both skeptical and open-minded, pragmatic and visionary, individualistic and communal. Above all, it is a philosophy of freedom and transformation, the freedom to choose one's own beliefs, symbols, and practices, and the power to transform oneself and the world. To practice chaos magic is to embrace uncertainty, ambiguity, and paradox. It is to recognize that reality is not a given, but a creation, that identity is not fixed but fluid, and that meaning is not discovered, but made. It is to approach magic as both art and science, both play and discipline, both skepticism and faith. It is to accept the challenge of self-creation and to take responsibility for the beliefs and actions that shape one's own reality. In the chapters that follow, we will explore the practical techniques, rituals, and tools of chaos magic, but it is important to remember that these are only means to an end. The true work of chaos magic is not the performance of rituals or the mastery of symbols, but the ongoing process of transformation, of the self, of perception, and of reality itself. The philosophy of chaos magic is not a set of doctrines to be memorized, but a living invitation to creativity, experimentation, and liberation. As you embark on your own magical journey, may you find the courage to question, the curiosity to explore, and the wisdom to create your own path through the chaos. Chapter 3: Historical Roots and Influences. The emergence of chaos ritual practices cannot be understood in isolation from the broader tapestry of esoteric traditions, cultural upheavals, and philosophical movements that have shaped the Western occult landscape. The story of chaos ritual is not a straightforward lineage, but rather a constellation of influences, borrowings, and creative recombinations. To trace its historical roots is to follow a trail through ancient magical practices, the flowering of Western esotericism, the radical innovations of the 20th century, and the countercultural ferment that ultimately gave rise to chaos magic as a distinct approach. This chapter explores these roots and influences, laying bare the foundations upon which chaos ritual stands. Ancient magic and the primordial impulse. Long before the emergence of modern magical philosophies, human beings engaged in rituals intended to affect the world through mysterious means. The earliest evidence of magical practice can be found in Paleolithic cave art, shamanic rites, and the invocation of spirits or natural forces for healing, hunting, and protection. These ancient practices were not chaos magic in the contemporary sense, but they reveal a common thread: the belief that ritualized behavior, imbued with intention and symbolism, can influence reality. As human societies developed, so did their magical systems. In ancient Egypt, priests and magicians employed complex rituals, incantations and amulets to invoke the favor of gods, protect the dead, and ensure the stability of the cosmos. The Egyptian worldview was steeped in the concept of ma'at, the principle of order, and magic, Heka, was seen as a means to maintain or restore balance. This interplay between chaos and order, between the unpredictable and the structured, would echo through later magical traditions. The Greco-Roman world added its own layers, blending Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and indigenous traditions. Theurgy, the art of invoking divine powers, flourished alongside more practical forms of magic such as the use of curse tablets, love spells, and protective charms. The Hermetic texts, attributed to the legendary Hermes Trismegistus, articulated a vision of the cosmos as a living, interconnected whole, accessible through ritual and Gnosis. You have been listening to an extended preview of Chaos Ritual Handbook. To continue reading, visit the LLH Media Store or the book's Amazon listing.